Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Christopher Carter for the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast, the day after the NFL trade deadline. We now know what the Steelers are. We know what they are not. So we're going to talk through where this roster stands. What is it capable of at this stage of the game? We're also going to get into the NFL draft a little bit later because a sub-story here of the Steelers not doing a ton at the trade deadline is that they will have a ton of picks going into the offseason to upgrade this roster for the draft that is coming here to Pittsburgh. So a lot to get to from the big picture perspective. Excited to dig into it with Christopher. Before we get started, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel. We also want to thank Edgar, Snyder, and Associates. When you've been hurt on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment is over? Who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. Insurance company doctors do. How does that make you feel? If the answer is not great, call Edgar, Snyder, and Associates today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. They'll fight for the work comp rights you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Chris, the Steelers did not do much at the NFL trade deadline. They got Kyle Duggar a few days ago. That was kind of the big move to the extent that there was one. No real help at defensive back, no real help at receiver, the two positions that we spoke about most leading up to the deadline. So this is the team that the Steelers are now. So I want to ask you this question to kind of set up the discussion here. The Steelers roster as constructed is capable of winning blank. Is it a playoff spot, a division, a playoff game, the AFC, the Super Bowl? I'm asking that in the context of what I noted in my questions post last week. The Steelers have wins against two division leaders and are a third division leader themselves. So they have a solid resume so far, but the Chiefs, Bills, some of those better teams are also lurking. So as you look at this team today and things can change, what do you see?
I see right now a team that could win a playoff game or maybe even two, depending on who they get matched up with. The fact is, as you said, it's not just the two division leaders. The two teams they beat are the two top teams in the AFC standings right now. The Colts at 7-2 and the Patriots at 7-2. They represent half the losses for those teams. I've said all along, I think this is an 11-win team. I still think this is an 11-win team. I think that they have a chance to win the division if the Ravens aren't on point. They haven't been on point. If the Ravens go on an unbelievable tear coming up here, then they can beat the Steelers and get to 12-5. But if they lose two more games, then my 11-6 prediction should hold out and hold on to the division. But I think if they're going to win playoff games, they need to get matched up with some of these teams out here that aren't superstar-led teams, because I think that's what a lot of these playoff games have come down to is these superstar quarterbacks who makes the biggest plays in the biggest moments. You've seen Patrick Mahomes be in the Super Bowl more often than not. I think going back to 2018 or 2019, whenever he took over for the Chiefs, it's either been Tom Brady or him or one-time Joe Burrow. And so I think that the Steelers, if they get matched up with, say, the Texans, the Jaguars, the Chargers, even the Broncos or the Patriots and the Colts, I think that those are matchups that they could win. But like you said, the Bills and the Chiefs are two teams that if they match up with them, I still think that their superstar quarterback abilities would be able to win out the day. But I do think the Steelers also have ways to beat those teams. Those teams are not infallible. But I just think that with the weaknesses the Steelers have going into this year, and I think that's part of what the Steelers were willing to accept with their lack of super investment into this team. I think that they're willing to say, like, hey, we're not going to bet it all on this year because what we're trying to do is build a window. And I said that before the season. I know some people were like, well, they're all in. But when you look the fact that they have not traded away a first-round pick, a second-round pick, or any real pick this year, they get cut for this year coming up, there is a commitment to rebuild this team to be younger, to be a more complete team. And I also say this to Steelers fans who were really upset that they didn't trade a fourth and a sixth to get a Jakobi Meyers, who was really only around for half a season. I look at even just in fourth-round picks, you kind of like the fourth-round picks that Omar Khan's using right now. In his first draft, that fourth-round pick was Nick Herbig A lot of people really like Nick Herbig. He's a really good producer. Last year's 4th round pick was Mason McCormick, who's a starting right guard and looking pretty good right now. This year's 4th round pick, Jack Sawyer, not as productive as those guys just yet, but he's being a pretty good rookie 4th round pick outside linebacker, just caught an interception off of Peyton Wilson's tip pass. He sacked a quarterback already this year. So I look at that and I think, man, like maybe keep them 4th round picks because they're better. That's more important than a rental is to find key elements to your roster to boost it. Not to mention other guys that were picked in the middle rounds like Peyton Wilson, Roman Wilson, Darnell Washington. All these guys I think are pretty important to the big picture, and that's what Omar Khan was willing to be patient for.
Yeah, and I think you set yourself up if you don't like any of the – we're going to talk about the quarterbacks in the draft, but you're an attractive place for a quarterback who feels like they could come in like Aaron Rodgers did this year and have success. So, it's not just about that either. If you have a deeper team, that's going to be a team that QBs want to play for. We saw that with Aaron Rodgers this year, and maybe we'll see it either with him or some of the guys that may be available on this upcoming market. Chris, is the gap with the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens narrower than it was a year ago? Because I think you can look at their records and say they aren't playing like dominant teams, even though they have the potential to be dominant teams. Do you think the Steelers are closer? And if so, how much closer?
I think it's narrow. It's more narrow because I think, one, those teams have not been as dominant. But two, I think the Steelers might be better than last year. And particularly because you saw this Colts team with a very good offensive line. I mean, people were showing highlights of how this offensive line was opening up holes the size of like Indianapolis stadium. Like they were just moving people all around. And this defensive front stood up to them and shut them down. Took away Jonathan Taylor, who still is, even after his worst performance of the season, he still is the leading rusher in the NFL. That alone, if that holds up, they play the Ravens in the coming month here, in their 2 matchups, if they're able to say you can't run on us, if the Ravens and they still split with the Ravens, or if the Ravens win a game or two, but that alone, if that holds up, they're a better team because of that, because they could not stop the run late last year when they played the good running teams like the Eagles, like the Ravens, and the Colts are the best running team in the NFL right now. And if that alone makes them better. And I think that Aaron Rodgers has been an upgrade over Russell Wilson. I think his offensive line has been an upgrade over last year. I think the biggest question is still with this secondary, can they do what they did Sunday more consistently as well? Because Jalen Ramsey looks like he's going to be sticking at safety. The plan at cornerback seems to have changed a little bit. I'll be intrigued to see what do they do here moving forward. Can they maintain the pace? And not saying can they maintain 6 turnovers a game, but can they maintain playing more sound defense across the board to put themselves in position to get those types of plays? I think that'll determine if they're better. But are they closer? I think so, because I don't think that there's a clear-cut juggernaut team in the AFC. If there was, it was the Colts, and they just took those guys down. And if it wasn't them, it was the Patriots, and they beat them in their house. So I think that they're closer, but I still think that when you get to the playoffs, a lot of times those big games come down to who can make the biggest plays in the biggest moments, who can avoid the biggest mistakes. I think the Steelers are closer to being a team that can do that. But I still think that the Chiefs and the Bills are going to be the 2 teams. Although, granted, right now, if the playoffs were to start today, the Chiefs would not be in it. It's kind of crazy to say. Yes,
it is. I'm not taking that to the bank yet, but we'll see how things play out there. The Steelers are plus 2,700 to win the AFC right now, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. So if you like their futures odds, make sure you head over there to take advantage. Excuse me, Chris, how do you feel about the DBs specifically as constituted? Are they good enough, or did Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan maybe miss the mark here? Because I know we're going to talk about receivers here in a second, but of the 2, you were more interested in defensive backs. That's where they didn't make the move. How do you feel about that?
I thought that it wasn't mandatory because I still think if they added a really good cornerback, like if they got a star pick at cornerback or safety, I would have been like, okay, maybe that changes my prediction for this season. But I still feel like they are missing a piece here because clearly Juan Thornhill hasn't worked out in their eyes. He didn't even play a single snap. Now maybe he comes back at some point and gets some snaps. Deshaun Elliott being out, but Kyle Duggar did a good job filling in. But clearly Jalen Ramsey, who I think you still kind of want to have in the slot sometimes, but you saw the energy he brought to this defense at free safety, and it's kind of hard to rip him away from that spot there, because Jalen Ramsey, I think, is still a good ball hawk. I think he's still a good defender that knows how to use his skills in the right way in space, but he's clearly not the shutdown corner that he used to be in his all-pro seasons, and I think that's fine, and that's what they were kind of willing to take at the slot cornerback position, but maybe you found something at free safety there. The question now will be, who can step up at the cornerback position, particularly at the outside cornerback position? Joey Porter Jr., I thought, had a good game, but not his best game still in this last week. He still got tagged for 2 defensive pass interferences. He did have an interception and a few breakups. His passer rating was allowed was really low because of that. But you thought Darius Slay would be good this year. He hasn't really been. Brandon Echols, I think, is a solid backup option, but I thought it would have been good for the Steelers to see if they could tap the tires on a Reek Woolen from Seattle. Weeks ago, the Titans traded Roger McCreary, a former second-round pick, at outside cornerback. It was a pick swap in the late rounds. I thought that would have been doable for the Steelers. I still think they should look at Asante Samuel Jr., who
I was about to ask you that, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, he's a free agent right now, and he says he's fully healthy. Bring him on in. You brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, so why not bring in this guy and see it is? Now, the thing is, I know that a lot of people are saying, thank you, Chris, but let me tell you, Asante Samuel Jr. is probably fielding a lot of calls right now, and so he's probably going to pick where he wants to go based on which defense he thinks he'll be the best in, and also which team he thinks might put him in the best spot to make more money next year. So maybe that's Pittsburgh, maybe it's not, but I do think that would behoove them. But this secondary as constituted right now, I think can bang with the offenses that aren't super potent. But I'll be curious to see not just how they perform this weekend against the Chargers, which are a good team, and they're also a playoff team, but they get that rematch with the Bengals in after this week, and it'll be in Pittsburgh, and the offense has been humming. You saw them put up 42 points. It still wasn't enough to beat the whoever they lost to this weekend. I can't remember right now. The Bears, right? So you're going to get to go up against that passing attack again. Is your new plan better against them? That'll be, I think, a big test to show that. But I still don't feel like this secondary is fully complete just yet. I still think they need either an outside corner, or I thought they could have added at safety if they got a Justin Reed from the Saints and they said, hey, Jalen, we're going to put you back down at cornerback, but now you can play aggressively and we're going to have help over the top. Because one thing that happened in this game, Adam, was the Steelers went from a team that played a lot of cover one man with one guy over the top, one safety shell defenses. They have been calling those pretty consistently, and they had not been running a lot of cover two. And NFL Next Gen Stats pointed out they used coming into this past weekend, they used split high safeties, the second fewest rate in the second lowest rate in the NFL at 28.2%. That's now this week was at 46.4%. So they switched to a lot of cover two in this game. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow Joey Porter Jr., Brandon Echols to be a little bit more aggressive underneath in their coverage. They can jump a few more routes because they know, hey, if I get beat for being too aggressive, I got safety help behind me. I think that's something the Steelers, if they can use that to ramp up some things, it could make them a better defense moving forward.
Chris, I guess we can get to the receivers quickly. I know you were relatively satisfied with what they have. I was curious if the Colts game changed your view of this team at all, that you might have liked to see someone other than Marquez Valdez-Scantling brought in. I still could be talked in either direction, to be honest with you. I think what they have is not good enough at the number 2 receiver, and I think there's going to be situations where you wish you had somebody better, especially as you get into the sticky parts of the season. But it's also true that they just don't want to do that. They like these heavy sets and how they're working. So what was your assessment of how that shook out?
I think that the Steelers, if you look at what was available, supposedly they were in on Jakobi Meyers, but not for a 4th and a 6th. And some people were saying that seems like such a light price. But again, you point out the 4th round picks of late, And it doesn't seem like a light price because that's a starter, a really good contributor, and a good rookie right now that you're getting in the 4th round that you have under your control for the next 4 years, at a very cheap price. Whereas you're paying that guy money. He's only coming in for a year. You're giving up 2 draft. Like I think that there's an underestimation for what the Steelers, how much the Steelers believe in their front office right now for the picks that they've assembled. I mean, again, look, in the last 3 years, this offensive line that's kind of becoming an above average unit right now, and it's just it's got guys playing in their 2nd and 3rd years, or some guys in their 1st years. They're all picked in the last 3 seasons. And so you look at that, you look at Derek Harmon, who I thought had a really good game this past week. You look at guys like Peyton Wilson coming into his own. Why would you not want to bet on yourself and keep the draft picks unless you're getting a guy that you know will be a core piece for years to come? And I think that's what they didn't see to give up, see enough of to give up. And I'll also say, like, you look at this draft class coming up of wide receiver, there's some really good players that you can get tapped in on. Jordan Tyson's going to be like probably the first guy off the board out of Arizona State. He's really good. But like, if this team got Carnell Tate out of Ohio State in this draft class this year, I'm telling you, you put him in this receiver line, you're going to be like, oh, okay, never mind. We're good. You don't need to get that. You don't need to make that trade for Deebo Samuel 2.0 or Brandon Ayuk, or whoever everyone wants them to draft every year. There's other guys like Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M, Elijah Sarrett out of Indiana, Nick Harbaugh out of South Carolina. There's some big playmakers in this draft class who I think would be very interesting to pair with DK Metcalf. And I just think that there's a lot of potential there, and that's what the Steelers are focused on right now. Yes, if DK Metcalf goes down right now, it'll suck because you won't have your number 1 threat. It'll put a lot on Calvin Austin and on Roman Wilson. But I just think that when you look at the way this offense works right now, it's fine that they kind of have their receiver situation that they have right now. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I don't think will do a whole lot unless someone gets injured. But I think the bottom line was, they were willing to add to it if it didn't cost too much. In their minds, it costs too much because their eyes are still on the future, and they still don't see this as the Super Bowl window. If they saw this as the Super Bowl window, I think they would be investing a lot more. They were willing to give up more to make it happen here. But right now, what I think that they see is a competitive team, a good team that they've assembled that can do what it can do this year. But they have a very young team in a lot of respects that is forming the core and the nucleus that'll open up the real Super Bowl window for years to come.
Yeah, and I think people feel the urgency because they see Aaron Rodgers, they see quarterback play that's better than what they've had in some time. Someone's going to have to play quarterback next year too, and if you like what you're building, then you're giving that quarterback a better chance to succeed. I think we saw the lack of roster depth really hurt Kenny Pickett in a rookie situation, and part of it was on Kenny Pickett, but you could have put a better team around him, and I think that's what they've maybe learned from that Kenny Pickett lesson a handful of years ago. We're going to talk more draft here in a second. Before we do, we want to thank another couple of sponsors. It's Savinas Kane and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers with over 85 years of experience. Visit them online at sdklaw.com. We also want to thank Olivia Numismatic Rarities. Got old gold or jewelry collecting dust? Turn it into instant cash safely and securely at Olivia Numismatic Rarities right here in Pittsburgh's Shady Side neighborhood. Gold prices are at historic highs, and ONR pays top dollar for your unwanted gold, silver, and coins. Stop by their Shady Side Gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue or visit onrcoins.com to learn more. That's onrcoins.com or call 412-900-COIN today. Chris, we're back on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Adam Bittner. He's Christopher Carter. We do a lot of draft coverage here after the season ends. You and I will be doing our mock draft projections for the draft coming up in Pittsburgh. We'll be hopefully doing our live show that we've done the last handful of years throughout the draft process. So a lot coming on that front. How do you feel about this draft class that they have held on to all of these picks for? Do you think, looking at some of the just early prognostications, I know you haven't dug far into the film yet as you are wont to do, but just on the surface level, do you look at this draft class and say the Steelers can get those players we were talking about in the last segment in the 4th round, in the earlier rounds with their extra picks to really build this roster up? or do you think that there's a lacking depth in some areas that concerns you?
I haven't been able to dive into depth yet. Like, I can't say to like who they should pick in the fourth round. I do think there will people be there in the fourth round. I think this is a good receivers class. I think this could be a good defensive class. I also think, I know a lot of people look at this quarterback class and say, oh man, this is a bust class. This is not. I kind of like who's at least going to be there. I think there's going to be at least 3 top quarterbacks that'll be worthy of first round picks who should be available. Those would be Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. The other would be Ty Simpson of Alabama. And then the last would be Dante Moore out of Oregon. If those 3 guys are there, this is going to be an interesting quarterback class to see who can go and get them in this draft class. Now, you're probably going to be saying, well, wait, teams like the Jets have like 3 first-round picks and all this stuff, and they can do all the things that they want to do. And yes, there's going to be other teams that can outbid you. But I think that there's a chance to still get one of these guys because not everyone goes for a quarterback. Sometimes, like Caleb Downs, I think, like if the Steelers found a way to get a superstar player in this draft class that wasn't a quarterback, Caleb Downs would be a heck of a get. If he somehow fell down because of the rush at quarterback to like 8 or 9 and they traded up to get him, I wouldn't be against that because when I look at Caleb Downs, I look at like the next like Polamalu, Ed Reed, superstar safety type of player that like Minkah Fitzpatrick that could change this defense generationally if they added him to the defense. So like there's guys like that. There's also quarterbacks like Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee who I think are really good and have a lot of potential there. I think there's receivers out there that are really good. I think Arvell Reese is a like phenomenal linebacker. And I know that a lot of people are like, they have enough linebackers. And I'm like, listen, you'll want this guy because this guy looks like he could be like something stupidly ridiculous. But I still think there's a lot of potential in this draft class. I'll be intrigued to see who comes out in it. Like I've been doing my QB tracker, Adam, and like, Lenore Sellers is still a guy who I think could be great in the NFL, but he has not had his best year with South Carolina, and not really to his fault. His offensive line has been terrible. The whole team is kind of falling apart around him. He's like kind of dragging them with one arm each week to try to even make them competitive. So for that, I think he'll go back into into college football next year, maybe transfer to like a better offense or better system that'll allow him to show off all his skills. But if he were for some reason to come into this draft class, I would think the Steelers should be very happy to pick him and just stay put at like 20, 24, wherever they draft at, because I don't think he'll be picked too high. But there's a lot of potential in this draft class. And like the other thing about this is that you look at their picks right now, they have 12 picks scheduled for this upcoming draft class. The projected picks, if you go to tankathon.com, which kind of like keeps track of where they expect teams to pick, 20, 51, 78, 85, 90, and 120 and 133. That's their picks through the first and through the fourth rounds. Not only do you have several shots at getting guys there, you can trade to move up with those picks to get where you want to go, and doing so without having to trade away too many future picks as well. I think there's a lot of potential for this team to add both a quarterback and B, plenty of other talent around a quarterback to kind of keep this young roster, this roster getting younger, more and more built and more stacked with depth players moving forward.
Chris, if I told you could have a deep draft class that adds a bunch of contributors, or one of the quarterbacks in this draft class, which are you picking? Because I think that's an interesting situation, because we went into this season thinking they're stockpiling picks to trade up for a quarterback, end of discussion. Now, though, we're in a situation where the 3 guys that you named at the top were none of them were the 3 guys we were talking about heading into this college football season. Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, you mentioned Lenore Sellers. All those guys are like out of the conversation at the moment. So does that make you, concerned about possibly throwing a ton of picks at some of these guys that were completely off our radars and are on it now? Or how do you view the potential of the scenario I think we thought was most likely going into the season of them giving up a bunch of these picks to get one guy?
I don't look at it too poorly because this happens every year. Most years, the quarterback that you think at the top of the class does not hold on to that spot because someone steps up or they fall off and this thing. And I even said at the beginning of the season, like, look, I did like Garrett Nussmeier was a lot of people's top quarterback. I was kind of like, he's not mine, but like I get like conceptually, like I get it because he has the potential and he's flashed this and that. Maybe it'll work out. But I was like, man, I'm bigger on Lenore Sellers. There's also, Fernando Mendoza, which was on my list. And I was like, I wanted to see how he does. And then, Ty Simpson comes out of nowhere and plays so well and so consistently. Dante Moore coming from UCLA going to Oregon, and you see the instant boost he gives to that offense. I still think it would be fun to pick a quarterback, but I do hate you for giving me such a tough question because, man, getting a quarterback fixes everything. If you get a franchise quarterback, you won the draft. You probably won the next 3 drafts, because if you have a franchise quarterback, it fixes so many problems. But here's the question I have, Adam, is I think the 3 guys that come out that are my best franchise quarterback prospects that I expect to come out this year, like I said, are Mendoza, Simpson, and Moore. But if Lenore Sellers were to go back in and stick around for another year, we know Arch Manning is sticking around for another year. And as I wrote in my my draft, my QB tracker, he stepped up the last 2 weeks, and he might be finding his feet, and he's still not going to be in this upcoming draft class, but I would very much consider him as the projected top pick for 2027. The Steelers, I think, look at the 2027 class and might think that quarterback class could even be better than this one if a guy like Lenore Sellers stays back, a guy like John Mateer out of Oklahoma stays back, which I expect him to do as well. A guy like Nico Iamaleava continues to grow at UCLA, Jaden Mayava at USC. I think Sam Leavitt out of Arizona State, who's going to miss the rest of the year due to injury, so he'll definitely be back next year. I think they may look and say, like, hey, there's still a lot of potential in next year's draft class. We don't have to force the pick at quarterback if we don't like it. Because I like these guys on tape. But it doesn't matter what you see on tape. When you bring these guys in the room, it does matter. But you got to see what these guys are like interviewing. Like, what kind of leaders are they? Because there's so many intangible things that you can't just tell by their processing on the field. How are they as a leader? How will they take on certain challenges? How they respond? If you look at Kenny Pickett and the way that he led Pitt, there were so many things that were like, hey, this guy could be the dude in the NFL if the right things work out. But when you see how he responded to adversity, the Steelers are like, no, we don't want that. And so there's things that you got to measure when you talk to these guys during the draft season that will change where you value them. And so if the Steelers think their guy is there, like if they think it's Mendoza, Simpson, or more, go get them. And if you get them and they're the guy, your window all of a sudden is open again. But if you feel like the better bet is to get a superstar playmaker, whether it's on offense or defense with that first round pick, and then use these other picks to continue to bolster your roster, and then next year's your year that you go and get the quarterback, because maybe you say, hey, you know what? This is the year. That is the year. If Arch Manning's coming out, we're going to sell out and be that team. We're going to give every first-round pick we can. We're going to do whatever we can to get that guy. Or if Sellers comes out next year, that maybe that's our guy. I can see weighing that option, but it's not a question that I think is definitively answered right now, Adam, because I still got to see who comes out this year for sure. But I would like, again, you can't pass up on the quarterback if you know you can get the guy that you think is the guy. You got to go get that guy when that guy's there. But you also don't want to force it. And that's the very tricky tightrope of a balance that every GM has to walk, because that is so huge.
Yeah, and I think the reason I would be probably leaning more toward getting a deep draft class is that this has somewhat become the age of the veteran quarterback being able to find a new home. And some of these guys who were top picks before finally figuring it out in their 30s. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. Obviously, the Steelers are having success with Aaron Rodgers. I think for a lot of teams, they'd look at what the Steelers did last year with Russell Wilson and say they had success going that route. And I understand why Steelers fans aren't happy about it. But if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, would you have liked to see what Russell Wilson did with this team last year? Probably. So I think it gives you the ability to say, we don't have to find our franchise guy. We can find our guy for now, maybe in free agency, and maybe get one of these quarterbacks we talked about that's fallen out of favor, a Garrett Nussmeier or Cade Klubnik, give them a chance to develop, or who knows, maybe you'll get another shot with Aaron Rodgers the way things are going. So I put that into the conversation as well, as that, it's not like it's just the only way to find a franchise QB at this point is the draft. I think you'd have a little more less margin for error going out into the free agency market. So we'll see how that plays out. Chris, thanks for joining me this week. Looking forward to our discussion next week after the game against the Chargers. So if you're new here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Chris will be back on Saturday with Brian Bacco. I'll be back with the Steelers post-game show late night after Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And please consider subscribing to our written coverage at post-gazette.com. Lots of good stuff over there. We appreciate that as well. And we'll talk to you all again next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.